Alright, so here's how she comes in the box. Take a quick peek before I take it out. Pretty well packaged. No damage whatsoever. Drive shaft itself. T-case, flange, 2-inch CV bolts, sticker. There was a piece of paper that came with this drive shaft. Basically, it was the offer for a free T-shirt where you got to pay for the shipping only. So I guess you're kind of paying for the T-shirt, but I did it. I got one in the house, and there. It's pretty cool. So T-case, flange comes well packaged as well. So give me a second. I'll get her out of the box and take a better look. Here she is out of the box. You take a closer look at it. First thing I noticed that has a very nice finish on it. So they did a really good job painting it. Stickers put on straight, which is amazing. I checked the U-joints on it. This is a 1350 Extreme Duty CV front drive shaft. And the reason I went to 1350 is because, hey, go big or go home. Have that extra insurance of having the bigger U-joints in it. It's going to be really tough to break. So these U-joints, the Extreme Duty and the Heavy Duty, the difference is heavy duty, it has the cross-drilled U-joints in it. They're greasable. These are non-greasable, so they're much stronger because there's no hollow section inside the U-joint itself. Taking a look at it though, machining's real nice on it. No burrs or anything whatsoever. I picked it up earlier. Free movement, all the U-joints, no binding. Same thing on the business end down here. She comes pre-greased, pretty much ready to chooch. Pretty impressed so far. Only ordered one other drive shaft from a well-known company, and that was Tom Woods, and that was a rear CV drive shaft for my 93 YG I used to have, and seemed to be a pretty decent drive shaft. Never broke or had any problems with it, other than the fact that when I got it, down here on this end, there's a cap that goes on the bottom with a hole in it so air can escape whenever the slip yoke extends and retracts. Well, that cap's supposed to be tack welded on, and it was just popped off and it was loose in the box. So, you know, luckily I hammered it in place, made it fit, zapped the tack weld on it, and then it never came off again. But for the amount of money you pay for these things, you shouldn't have to do that, in my opinion. Here's the flange. Came with it. One thing to keep an eye out for if you get this is this packet of red Loctite comes with the drive shaft, but you can see mine kind of exploded and leaked all over inside the yoke, or the flange itself. It was packed down the side of there, so make sure you take that out before you install this thing. Also a well machined part. I think it's got some black anodizing on it, or whatever finish it is. It's nice. And then included are 4 12mm 12-point, you see the metric grade there, 12.9, so these are heavy duty bolts. Yep, ready to start the install. Let's go. Step one of installing a new drive shaft is getting the old drive shaft out. To do that, start off taking out these 4 15mm bolts on the forward pinion flange. Take out the 3 completely, loosen up the last one, that way it's holding insecure until you can get the back removed. In case anybody's wondering, yellow mark on the pinion flange, yellow mark on the drive shaft, it's matched from the factory as it's balanced. So if you're going to remove your factory drive shaft and put it back in for some reason, you just want to make sure that you have both the yellow marks lining up. It's hard to do one-handed, man. What can I say? You get the gist. Next step is to remove the 8mm 6-point bolts that go around the transfer case output yoke. There's a total of 8 of them, so you can pull all 8 of those out. Because it sits inside of the flange, it's going to have to be punched out from the rear, and I'll give you a shot of those here in a second. Here's a shot of the back side of that transfer case yoke, and the hole I'm talking about is right here. So that basically goes through into the flat face of the into the drive shaft here. So there's a hole on opposing sides, 180 degrees apart. So what you might have to do is put the Jeep in neutral, dechalk the tires, and then maybe jack up one of the tires in the front so you can work this drive shaft back and forth. And you gotta alternate sides, punch a little here with maybe the short section of an L-shaped Allen key, and then tap on the other side, or if you can get a drift in there, whatever you gotta do, just work its way out, and then completely remove the drive shaft once it's done. Yeah, so here's another option. If you need to rotate your transfer case yoke so you can punch the drive shaft out of the flange itself, you can just take a bungee cord, bungee up the drive shaft, and that way you can freely rotate back in the rear. If you can see here, as you need to get to these holes, like that in there, punch on that side, turn it, and then punch on that side right there. Holes without threads only. Once you get your factory drive shaft out, this is what you're going to see. We're going to take that nut off in the center there. I think it's like a 32 millimeter. Let me double check that, and if I'm wrong, I'll let you know. I'm going to squirt a little penetrating oil in the bolt in the center, and then buzz them off of the impact. Stand by. Got her whooped. From here, you gotta take a BFH or whatever you got, gear puller, whatever you want to use, and then you have to tap on the back of this flange to get it to separate from the output shaft on the transfer case. Bamsus. Let me get a better shot of that. Lights, lights, lights. There's your splined output shaft. Notice the seal there, so everything's looking good. Alright, so first thing you're going to want to do for the install is take your old factory flange here. And down inside, you're going to find there's an O-ring. So you remove that O-ring and you can transfer it over to your new yoke. Alright, next thing you're going to want to do, once you get that O-ring seated down inside of the new flange, all the way against those splines down there in the bottom, you're going to take the flange and you install it onto the output shaft of the transfer case until it's fully seated. From there, you take that factory nut that you took off. And I was wrong earlier, it's not a 32 millimeter, it's actually 1.25 inches. A 32 millimeter will work, but 1.25 inches fits a little bit better over it. Once you go to install this nut, you're going to want to take some black, well, it doesn't have to be black, just get some RTV silicone, and you're going to want to apply a bead of silicone to the back of the mating surface here on the actual nut. That way it'll prevent leaks. You'll go ahead and you'll start the nut onto the threads on the output shaft, and then the Adams Driveshaft install instructions say to torque it down to 160 foot-pounds. So I'm going to do that now. Alright, so there the flange is fully installed. One thing I forgot to mention about that nut, when you put it on, make sure you put the red Loctite on the nut itself and then run it down. I would have filmed torquing it, but 160 foot-pounds, it's a decently hoss, so I needed to hold on to something. My creeper seat was rolling away. So from here, you can go ahead and put your transfer case back into 4 high. I'm sorry, back into 2 high. That way you can rotate the flange freely. And I'm going to start putting the drive shaft in here and start threading those drive shaft bolts by hand. Make sure you use red Loctite on those as well. Here's the final outcome of the install. Not bad at all. Might have taken me maybe an hour to install it, remove the old one, install this one, but not a hard job at all. So looking forward to testing it out. Tell you what, one thing you're going to notice behind the drive shaft there is that my loop pipe is deleted. I got the Afd Loop Delete in preparation for the Clayton 3-link long arm I'm going to put on this beast. So, show you right there, I mean business. One of the benefits to installing a CV type front drive shaft on one of these 4-door JKs, and then along with the an exhaust spacer kit, like you see I got right there. So that way your front end can droop further than factory, especially whenever you're lifted. So I'm running 3.5 inches of lift in the front of this Jeep right now. I have that exhaust spacer kit in there with the Afd Loop Delete pipe. Just installed the CV drive shaft. I know it's kind of hard to tell from this angle, but it registers in about a good solid 2.5 inches of clearance. The drive shaft has to droop down for down travel, so definitely an improvement over what we had.